Since the initial launch of the Xbox, Halo has been a staple of the success for Microsoft getting themselves into the console business. Without Halo, the Xbox to this day might not have even existed, let alone be anywhere near as attractive compared to the likes of the PlayStation or even other brands that could have made it instead of the Xbox. Bearing in mind at the time as well that Halo was one of the first console games of its time to have a full story-driven campaign with characters which were just absolutely badass, on a controller with analog sticks as well. Today that might seem normal to us, but back then Microsoft were a laughingstock for trying this as well, especially paired with the Duke controller, which in its time was absolutely huge. Bungie really struggled early on as well with quality control when it came to trying to get the original Halo game on the original Xbox. They would encounter a lot of crashes when trying to playtest, frame drops, and huge lag spikes during combat, and things that the game could just not launch with. This resulted in the crunch for Halo Combat Evolved being really bad, with developers working stupid hours to try and fix the game at all costs, even attempting to ask Microsoft for a delay of the launch of the game, but Microsoft were not having any of it because this was the launch title for the Xbox, so it was in a sense make or break. But Bungie managed to absolutely nail it. The launch of Halo Combat Evolved seen a tremendous amount of positive support and feedback, from the immediate love for the game. The split-screen co-op for campaign and multiplayer that you could play with your friends was an absolute instant hit. People would literally be lugging their TVs and Xboxes to a friend's house over miles and miles, even in some cases cross-country. This would be to play 8v8, this would be to play LAN parties up to 16 players, or even do a 4-player campaign playthrough, which was just so much fun back in the day. Halo was the game that truly brought together communities and actually cemented the fundamentals for the way that FPS games are even created today. And with the addition of Xbox Live as well, which came a bit later on, this only further enhanced the attraction to the Xbox. To play Halo, you needed to go out and you needed to buy an Xbox. There was no other way to play this game. And with that, Microsoft struck gold. After Halo Combat Evolved's massive success, it was thought that it would be almost impossible to top off what was an absolutely incredible and industry-defining game. However, Bungie had something special up their sleeves, something that would in fact take Halo and Xbox to that next level, Halo 2. As much as an amazing game Halo 2 was, and still even is to this day, it came with its fair share of development issues. At this point, most of us have probably seen the Vidocs which were created during the development of Halo 2 and how the development was around it, and that it was not a very pleasant thing at all. Essentially, the first 2 years of development they were storyboarding and creating ideas which didn't really fit together to make a full game. Bungie wanted to hype the community up, let them know that Halo 2 was going to be on another level compared to Combat Evolved. So in order to do this, they decided to spend a lot of time and put a lot of effort and resource into approximately 6 months or so to creating an E3 demo from 2003, which was absolutely mind-blowing back in the day, and to be honest, if this was part of the game, it would have just been epic. However, it turns out that in fact this E3 demo was complete smoke and mirrors. It looked as though that it was being played live in front of the audience, but really it was just a pre-recorded gameplay which looked like in the moment was being played live to them. And the entire build in fact had to be scrapped because the original Xbox just couldn't handle the game. Bungie were in a terrible situation here. With only 9 months left to develop the next iteration of Halo, with the stakes being so stupendously high, they needed to get something together, and something together fast. Bungie got to work and had to cut out multiple missions, change cutscenes, and even the format of how the story would flow and be told. This was a hellish 9 months for Bungie and their developers. It's known that developers would even be sleeping and living in their offices, their families having to physically go to the office in order to be able to see them. It was really not a good thing. This was the gaming industry crunch at its absolute finest, but it was the difference between a complete failure and making one of the greatest video games of all time. And Bungie fucking nailed it. When Halo 2 first came out, fans were really shocked, but also really intrigued as well when looking at things from the perspective of the Covenant. We see Thel'Vardin being brought to the Council by Tartarus on High Charity, and questioned in front of the Free Prophets. But then on the other side of the fence, we see humanity celebrating their win against the Covenant and destroying the Halo ring at the end of Combat Evolved. This was storytelling at its absolute finest, and it gave you an amazing insight into the way the Covenant worked, and that they weren't actually too much different from humanity in a sense. But then 3 or 4 missions into the campaign, we play as the Arbiter, actually playing as a member of the Covenant, and fans' jaws dropped. Now it's important to note that not all warmed up to the idea of this at first, but it's safe to say that the Arbiter has become many people's, including myself's, favourite Halo character of all time. Not to mention the voice acting was pure fucking gold. The immersion was honestly class.
Kill me or release me, parasite. But do not waste my time with talk.
Now, with the campaign being an absolute 11 out of 10, obviously not including the ridiculous legendary difficulty or those fucking sniper jackals, this wasn't the only thing that was desirable about Halo 2. Some could even argue that the multiplayer was the bigger reason for the game's success. The fact that Xbox Live initially launched with this entire game in mind, people were itching to get on and try it out. With Halo 2's ranking system, immersive gameplay, and ability to play with your friends online, which was completely brand new at the time, it was an immediate system seller that put Xbox well and truly onto the map. Fast forwarding 3 years later, a brand new console generation was here as well. And of course, a new Halo. Bungie were coming off the back of a massive success with Halo 2, but given the ability to show off even more power that was produced by the Xbox 360 compared to the previous generation of Xbox. The hype was fucking real for this game.
They let me pick. Did I ever tell you that? Choose whichever Spartan I wanted. You know me. I did my research, watched as you became the soldier we needed you to be. Like the others, you were strong and swift and brave. A natural leader. But you had something they didn't. Something no one saw but me. Can you guess? Luck. Was I wrong?
To this day, Halo 3 remained as one of the greatest video games of all time, and has pretty much set an industry standard for how FPS games should be created and presented from that day onwards. The campaign, besides the obvious change of voice actors for some key characters from the back of Halo 2, which I didn't mind at all to be honest, it was almost flawless for me. The overall sandbox was drastically improved from the likes of Halo 2, and the more open world feel from Combat Evolved that was brought back in all of its glory. Not to mention that ending mission though. But the multiplayer was where it was really at. A full ranking system, challenges, service record which was completely new at the time, theatre mode, forge mode, custom games. Halo 3 pretty much carried itself through the years up until the release of MCC just because of these community features. Not to mention as well, it made the Red vs Blue series so much easier to recreate and record as well. Following Halo 3, Bungie decided to cap the Master Chief's journey off at the trilogy, and then add to the universe in different ways by creating games which are looking through the eyes of different key characters in the Halo universe. To start with, Bungie ventured out and created a game in the eyes of an ODST, Halo 3 ODST. The game told the story through the eyes of an ODST in the city of New Mombasa just after the slipspace portal from the Prophet ship caused a catastrophic shockwave across the New Mombasa, destroying pretty much everything within it. The reception for this title was a little mixed at the start, others loved it whilst others didn't really like it at all. With it not having the Master Chief as the front and centre of it, I suppose fans didn't really know what to think when they first started playing it or when it was first announced. It was more of a DLC to Halo 3 than an actual fully fledged game, and that's how a lot of people did see it and even still see it to this day. It essentially used Halo 3 sandbox with its assets as well, with a couple of different changes here and there, for example the silenced pistol and suppressed SMG, but it gave us the perspective during a moment in Halo 2 which I just thought was really cool. And personally I loved the characters within Halo 3 ODST, the cast and just the overall theme and aesthetic of the game. I would have liked a little bit more stealth in there, but I can't complain. I really enjoyed the campaign and the direction that it went, really. Then came 2010. In my opinion, one of the best Halo games that's ever been created, Halo Reach.
The fuck you say to me, you little shit!
Now, the campaign was controversial in the sense that 1, it wasn't the Master Chief, 2, it was another spin-off, and 3, we were introduced to a whole new team of Spartans and their stories that we'd never met before. And it was apparently based before Halo Combat Evolved, which was a cool thing, and others thought that was a bit strange, but I overall loved it. Which meant, of course, then as well, we were building up the lore from that game, and even before that game happened. That means that when we finished Reach, we can go back to Combat Evolved, and it all makes a lot more sense. And things like seeing how Cortana was made, introducing us to Captain Keyes as well. But it wasn't the main reason why this game, in my opinion, was an absolute masterpiece. The multiplayer. The sheer leap this game took from the multiplayer side of things was just astronomical for 2010. The ranking system with a credit system, the armor system, which was just absolutely amazing, and I had literally no flaws to give you about it. The challenge system, the firefight system coming back from ODST as well, which was a new thing, and the new and improved Forge mode. Apart from the campaign, of course, for some, Halo Reach innovated massively and gave us that big change we were all waiting for in the Halo franchise. And it was by far my favourite way to play multiplayer back in the day. I loved every minute of creating, playing, and trying to beat my friends ranking up in Halo Reach. To this day, Halo Reach is the game I've put the most time into forever. I think I've never put as much time into a game than I have on Halo Reach. It's scary to think the amount of time of my life that was wasted creating things on Forge, playing multiplayer with friends, and playing Ghostbusters or Ghost Hunt on custom games. It was honestly an amazing time, and I really hope that Halo Infinite's Forge this time around will recreate some of those same memories that Halo Reach provided me. This was honestly the best 10 years of a video game that we've ever really had. Tell me the last time a game's released 5 games that have all been extremely well polished, the story's been flawless throughout, and they've innovated every time they've released a new game. Typically when a game releases the second, third or fourth version of that game, or the sequel on that, it typically means they get worse and worse and less effort over time. But Halo did it in a way where it expanded upon the story but also gave us innovative features for multiplayer and different things like that. For me, Halo has been one of the most successful 10-year games on its first iteration with Bungie than it ever will be again. I just hope that 343 can take it on and do the same going forward. But overall, the story of these 5 Halo games were the ones that will resonate with the player base forever. The fanbase waited anxiously to see what 343 would pull out the bag, no one really knowing what would happen to Halo, what direction 343 would take it, and how it would compare to the gaming giant at the time, Bungie. And on November the 6th, 2012, just 2 years after Bungie had left, 343 shown off their new title. For me, Halo 4 was a very mixed bag. I actually quite liked the direction 343 went with the story in Halo 4, because in the first 3 main Halo games, the Chief's personality was very regimented, and obviously he didn't speak much and would come out with some badass one-liners every now and then.
Tell that to the Covenant.
This was because Bungie wanted the Master Chief to be us, the player, a partially silent protagonist that only really speaks and voices what we're thinking at the time to expand on the story. But 343 decided to come away from that, and in the last 3 games have actually made the Chief his own character, rather than us, the player, just being Chief. We're now playing as the Chief as an actual character, going through the story as him through his eyes, if that makes sense. It made sense in my head anyway. But Halo 4 took that emotion and we learnt more about the Chief, what he was about, his relationship with the crew members on the Infinity, Cortana and also Dr. Halsey. He did have some mixed opinions at the time, but overall I really liked it, and I'm glad they still went in that direction with Infinite as well. But man, the way that Halo 4 looked. When I first played through that game, I actually wondered if the opening cutscene was a film. It looked absolutely stunning, and it was nothing like we'd ever seen before at the time. And to get that sort of performance on an Xbox 360 is honestly commendable, and I don't know how 343 did it. I just remember when I first booted up that game and thought to myself,
hold up, wait a minute. Something ain't right.
Comparing it to the likes of Black Ops 2 at the time that was striving, but it was night and day difference of how different those games looked. The multiplayer on the other hand was a bit of a different story, trying to keep up with and replicate popular games at the time like Black Ops 2, which was an obvious comparison when it first came out, with things like sprint being added, actual class setups in the multiplayer, and just a very, very different feeling multiplayer. I would go as far as categorizing it as one of my least favourite multiplayer experiences in the franchise, which to some may be controversial, but to me, other games just do a way better job with it. But what was next for Halo after this? After leaving a very split fanbase with the multiplayer and some controversial points in the campaign, some going back to the likes of Halo 3 for multiplayer, and others sticking out through Halo 4's lifecycle, what direction were 343 going to go in? Well, this is where Halo 5 came in, and after the very first tease for the game dropped, it looked absolutely epic, with the Chief in a poncho and a huge Guardian just coming out of nowhere. It got the whole community hyped, and with Cortana essentially dying in Halo 4, it left the whole community with a bit of an element of mystery, like what's going to happen in Halo 5? How will they take the story forward without Cortana? And then in a teaser, when the Chief pulls out Cortana's old chip, I will not forget the day that I watched that trailer. When the Guardian blew the poncho off, we could see the Chief, his new armor, the cracked visor, and it was just so hype at the time. I really do remember getting excited for Halo, because it looked so good, and we were like, what is this Guardian thing? What is this thing coming out of the sand that makes everything look so epic? And yeah, it was very, very exciting time. Fast forwarding a couple of months, they implemented a character which not many people are too familiar with unless you were a hardcore Halo fan, called Spartan Locke, essentially labeling him within the marketing as a Spartan killer, with Chief lying against a statue with a pistol pointed towards his head. Then all of a sudden the roles just flip, with another commercial showing the Chief pointing a pistol at Locke's face, entailing that these two are at each other's throats for the majority of the game, but a similar question was going through the community, and that was the mystery of the marketing. The reality was a little bit different, but again, the marketing did get everyone really hyped. This game could and probably should have been way much more. Sounds very similar to Halo Infinite, but sometimes reality's a bit of a bitch, and we got this.
Weapons free. Contact.
Halo 5 was criticised from a campaign perspective as being very lackluster and just not feeling like Halo. The fact that we only played the Chief for 3 missions throughout the entire campaign and Spartan Locke for the overall majority, in my opinion, was just a red flag from the get-go. Not to mention the Michael Bay cutscenes, awful choreography in the fight scenes. Don't even get me started on the Chief and Locke fight scene. I'm going to compare the Chief and the Locke fight scenes from Halo 5 and the Atriox and the Chief fight scene from Halo Infinite. They're next to each other right now. Look at the difference in the movement and the way that it looks. You can definitely tell that the Atriox and the Chief fight scene was just an all-out brawl. They really wanted to hurt each other and just go at each other's throats. Whereas the Locke and the Chief fight scene just doesn't quite hit the same. I am so glad that 343 had learned from this Halo 5 cutscene. And then out of nowhere, we're hit with an absolute bombshell. Cortana's back. This was a really confusing time for me. And just generally, it was a really confusing time for the Halo fans in general, until later on in the game, we know that she was now within the Forerunner domain, which is essentially the fountain of youth for AIs. We then go on to learn that she's this overpowered megamaniac that just wants humanity's AIs to take over the universe. It was a lot for me to take in at the start. Overall, the campaign just was not one of my favourites. Even the fact that it doesn't even have couch co-op, bearing in mind that this was the first Halo game to not have this feature since Combat Evolved in Halo 1. And it didn't go down too well with the player base, I can tell you that.
First strike, there is no split screen multiplayer at all. One of the core tenets of the Halo franchise now completely ripped out with no warning, gone, removed, in a blatant effort to force you to buy 2 copies of the game and a second Xbox One. Something that people had no problem doing with, mind you, for Halo 1 and Halo 2 after playing split screen with friends. But here, Microsoft and 343 Studios said, "Fuck your friend, give me money!"
The story overall was very underwhelming and it did not live up to the marketing hype. I don't know what changed from the marketing to the full game, but they seem like very, very different games. I don't know if something changed last minute or if a direction from Microsoft or some of the higher ups from 343 had changed last minute. I don't really know, but the marketing didn't really suit or fit what was going on in the actual campaign. Like, it could have been so much more, and I think Spartan Locke was done extremely dirty in this game. I mean, we played as him for the majority of the game, which one already put a sour taste in people's mouths about him, because we want to play as the Chief, you know? We don't want to play as Spartan Locke. We don't, for one, know who the hell he is, and two, when we're forced to play as him when we want to play as the Chief, it's going to make us not like this character. And two, he's hunting down our boy, you know? We don't want the Chief to be hunted down. We don't want the Chief to be at gunpoint when he's at his most vulnerable state. We love the Chief. We've been at the Chief at the very start. So that was one of the mysteries, but also one of the things like, who's this guy, you know? If I told you that in Halo 5 story, it was initially supposed to be about an only special agent who was Spartan Locke, known for assassinating high-value targets, who turned into a Spartan Force to try and hunt down the infamous Master Chief because he had gone rogue. We don't know why he'd gone rogue, but maybe it could have been because he found Cortana, similar to the story already, and Spartan Locke was sent by the UNSC to try and hunt down the rogue Master Chief and, if needed, assassinate him. However, later on in the campaign, when they finally do meet, during potentially their awful fight scene, that's when Locke understands what's going on. And that's where they potentially start to work together. Or maybe even the same things happened after that fight scene, but there was just a better fight scene. Maybe at this point, this is when the Chief could potentially threaten Locke and put him at gunpoint. And then this is where the marketing does kick in. Or that they meet twice, spend the rest of the campaign chasing the Chief, and have an underwhelming fight that you can't actually do anything during. Which one would you prefer? But Halo 5 actually wasn't all bad, and I know I'm going to be slated for this, but I actually didn't mind the multiplayer a whole lot.
The fuck you say to me, you little shit?
Now, this will be controversial, and I can understand why, but Halo 5 and 343 tried something new. They wanted to try and evolve the Halo franchise and make it more strategic, tactical game that involves a lot more skill to master, movement-wise. Yes, there were some balancing issues with weapons and vehicles, the pistol was very overpowered, and the Wasp was just bollocks. Not to mention the rec packs, which were just absolutely horrendous. But we won't make that the topic of this video because we'll just go down a rabbit hole. Oh, and not to mention the huge lack of content at launch, like Halo Infinite, so we can't really moan there. Warzone being very, very underwhelming after the first week, and it's just generally not appealing to the hardcore Halo community who preferred to play the broken MCC rather than Halo 5. But as much as I can see why people didn't like the multiplayer because it was a massive difference compared to Halo 4 and the games previous, I commend 343 for trying to change it up at the time. But come on, classic Halo will never be beaten, and we've seen this with Halo Infinite's multiplayer. It's gone back to its roots and it feels amazing, and the community, by and large, love it, despite some of the very apparent issues with microtransactions and leveling, etc. But then there's Forge, which was our most advanced version of Forge that we've ever had. I've never played Forge too much in Halo 5, I'll be honest, but I do know that it was delayed from the game's launch to ensure it had all of these features, it was polished completely, and that 343's ambition of Forge was taken to another level. Halo Infinite's Forge is apparently supposed to be a massive step up from even Halo 5, which maybe features things like AI scripting to an extent which would be so sick. So rather than having someone in Duck Hunt be the person with the sniper, you have an AI doing it. That would be so cool. But comparing it to Halo Infinite, I can 100% see why people didn't really like Halo 5. From the very linear level design to the very far from normal feeling Halo gameplay, Halo 5 lacked the DNA that fans just loved. Although it was fun to get into at first, it just didn't feel the same. Whereas Halo Infinite, it holds the DNA from previous Halo games that everybody loved, whilst also adding in those up-to-date features that we love to see in other games, such as the likes of Sprint. Not many people do like it in Halo, but Halo Infinite does it right. Halo 5 didn't do it right. But it's very interesting to go back to Halo 5 and look at what it's like in 2022. I jumped back into the multiplayer the other day and I was really enjoying myself. I mean, if that was the only game I was playing for 6 years, then I can understand that it would be extremely irritating and I would probably come to hate it myself. But for something to just jump on for a few games here and there, from a multiplayer perspective, has that typical feeling that when you jump onto the previous game in a franchise or a universe like Call of Duty, which is known for, I mean, even players that are bored of Halo Infinite right now because there's no progression system, no armor ranking up, and there's only really a battle pass you can play and lack of game modes as well, people are jumping back onto Halo 5 and are enjoying it quite a lot. If you haven't already and you're feeling the fatigue of Halo Infinite's multiplayer, then I do urge you to go back and try Halo 5. See how it compares and do see what you think. You never know, your opinion may have changed. Or if not, you can play MCC, either one works fine. And now this leaves us with Halo Infinite. A game with so much promise and so much potential. And in some ways, Infinite's 100% delivered and more. The gameplay is absolutely fantastic, going back to the roots of Halo and modernizing it in a way that it actually feels better than the originals in my opinion. But with Halo adopting that live service method, it's resulted in support for the game to suffer drastically, with updates not coming regularly and huge lengths of time of hearing nothing from 343 at all. Angry Joe was absolutely spot on when he said this back in Halo 5's review, and it's exactly what's happened. It's almost like he predicted the future. Take a listen.
It's the mark of a bad live service launch all over again. An unfinished feeling that, oh, we'll complete the game later. You know, first off, there's no co-op campaign. I screamed Bloody Mary when there was no split screen co-op in Halo 5. There was split screen. But here you get no co-op at all. Fuck you. No co-op. It is unforgivable. A casualty of the live service bullshit. There's no Forge. And the restrictive nature of the multiplayer desperately needed it. The theater's often broken big team battle for like nearly a month now so far. And when you can get into the game, there's only like 3 fucking maps for one of the best modes. Are you out of your mind? Are you out of your mind? The rank system, it's janky. There's no server browser. There's desyncs. There's broken matchmaking. The list goes on. Nobody can deny these missing and problematic things at release. And on top of that, now we have our multiplayer fucked with and turned into a free-to-play microtransaction shop with terrible progression, appalling at release, and still pretty much a slog after these supposed fixes. Why? Because fuck you, give me money. That's why. It is designed this way. And I warned about this kind of thing in Halo 5, and people laughed. And yet, here we are.
And one of the biggest challenges that we knew that we would have, and no matter what we did, we were going to have this, which is changing Halo 20 years of box product models to a free-to-play model is not something that is going to be inherently satisfying for most of our players.
Modern gaming.
Is it good for Halo that now we have to spend $10 fucking for fucking blue? For fucking blue!
Halo Infinite's campaign was absolutely fantastic, and I cannot wait for DLC. Also, Halo Infinite's multiplayer is absolutely outstanding, and I can't wait for more content to come like maps, game modes, and even more. The likes of Forge as well will take this game to the next level. The overall health of the game has suffered massively due to the lack of content and the lack of transparency by 343. When Forge arrives as mentioned, Firefight and more, the game will flourish 100%. And unfortunately, it's just that weight at the moment that's killing the player base off a little bit. But guys, what do you think about this? Let me know in your comments down below what you think of Halo Infinite, and what do you think needs to be done to make this game flourish as mentioned, or make it better than what it is right now. Hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Take care. Hope you have enjoyed this video as well. Drop a like if you have. Subscribe if you guys are brand new for plenty more content coming. I'll be branching out as mentioned a little bit, but not too much, because I do like Halo. I want to try and stick around with this, and if it takes a while for us to grow, then so be it. Have a good rest of your day, guys. We'll see you all in the next one.